One DNA report completely changed the way I eat, sleep, and take supplements. And the surprising part, it wasn't because of MTHFR or COMT or any of the other single genes that you hear people talk about. It was when I discovered that I had the APOE34 plus many other cardiovascular genes that suddenly my diet, especially the type of fats that I was eating, I needed a complete rethink. I switched from a higher fat, lower carb diet to more of a Mediterranean style diet. This one discovery explained why there was so much cardiovascular disease in my family. And the most important thing, though, is it gave me the tools to help prevent these things from getting worse for myself. And then I found something even more surprising about homocysteine. I've had elevated levels for a while, but whenever I took the methyl B vitamins, it caused too much anxiety. Everyone says take methylfolate for high homocysteine, but my genetics showed that I needed more vitamin B2. And when I fixed that, my homocysteine levels dropped. And that's when it clicked. One gene doesn't tell your whole story. Your entire genetic system does that. And for the past decade, I've reviewed thousands of lab results, DNA reports, and I can tell you most DNA testing is oversimplified. You can't treat someone just based on one gene. So today I want to show you exactly what matters in genetic testing, how this DNA report helped me redesign my diet, improve my sleep, and choose supplements that make the difference. And the key to this is something that most people have never heard of, polygenic scoring. This is the key, not single SNPs, not do you have MTHFR. Have you ever been told you have the MTHFR gene so you have to take folate, or even worse, high dose homocysteine supplements? This is what I did many years ago and it ended up causing me a lot of anxiety. Polygenic scoring means analyzing thousands of variants across pathways instead of trying to predict from one tiny piece of data. And once you understand the difference, your interpretation of the DNA reports changes forever. Let me explain this in a simple way, because it's hard to understand this polygenic scoring. So if you're looking at one gene like MTHFR, it's like looking at one pixel on a giant screen and trying to guess the whole picture, or having one piece of a jigsaw puzzle. But if you've got polygenic scoring, it's like looking at the whole puzzle. Everything becomes a lot clearer. So now that you understand why single gene testing can be misleading, let me show you exactly how polygenic scoring works inside my actual DNA test results, and how it guided the changes I made to diet, sleep, and supplements. So here's the overview page of the SelfDecode website. And so here you basically get all the different, you can click into the different individual health reports, summaries, some of the more advanced ones, methylation panel, individual gene reports, biohacker reports. And I'll go through these in a little bit more detail in a moment. You've got different scores and there's just, once again, the summary of the top reports. And then the risk factors, and heart and blood vessels is not surprisingly my number one risk because that's a big genetic factor in my family. And if you click on that, you look at, more likely to have atherosclerosis. That's true. I've had the scans, and some of these, like more likely to have stroke, there's a family history. But some of these doesn't, just because I've got this genetic predisposition doesn't mean it's going to happen. By doing all the diet, lifestyle, and interventions, I can reduce my risk of potentially having any of these issues occur. And that's where I've, addressed my higher homocysteine levels. And then in the recommendations, this is where they can sometimes look a little bit generic. Number one, eat more fiber-rich foods, Mediterranean diet, supplements, green tea, vitamin D. This is all based on the most researched things. And you can get a lot more other things depending on the different health reports, which we'll go through in a moment. But they're just some of the basic recommendations for me based on labs and my genetics. And there's over 1,000 different health reports. And this is the health report summary, when you can just look at all the different, you can click on the cardiovascular report and it'll go into a lot more detail. Once again, the recommendations are going to be the most research based. But as you get down, there's 50 recommendations here. And we'll see these at the bottom, but these are all the different, the most likeliest things going down to, least likely. Here we've got the individual health reports. Once again, more likely to have gut inflammation, IBD. That's never happened to me. Fatty liver, blood clotting. These are some things that aren't an issue for me, but if I ate differently and lived a different lifestyle, that could be more of a factor. Things like the artery hardening definitely has happened. I haven't had an arthritis in my neck, but that's actually something my mum gets very badly. I do get some low blood sugar at times. So then there's literally thousands. They always have the ones that are more likely or the worst at the top. And then you'll get into the ones that are just typical or average likelihood of things like nail biting. And then the ones that you're least likely to have a problem with, like least likely to have frozen shoulder, less likely to have daytime sleepiness. And there's many more reports like this. The next page is the functional summary reports. And these are all the different competitor reports that they've made a big summary of. So any of the other genetic testing companies, you can download these reports also. And I'll show you a couple of those in a minute. Now here's all the individual gene reports. While individual genes may not matter as much as polygenic scoring, sometimes it's interesting to look at a specific gene for a specific condition. And these are the biohacker reports. So these are reports that have less scientific or less studies behind them. So they put them under this section because while there is some research and evidence of these things occurring, they're not as well studied. And here we have the medical reports. So based on the genetics again, these will go into genes in a lot more detail. And some of these conditions that they might talk about here, like Alzheimer's, this isn't a paid extra add-on report. That can be a little bit scary for some people, but knowing this information helps me be proactive and to help prevent Alzheimer's occurring. It's sometimes good to work with a practitioner to go through these reports. Some people, and this is not part of the standard SelfDecode package, this is a paid added extra. So if you've got, more likely to have bone cancer, liver cancer, that can be unsettling for some people. But once again, it's just your genetic predisposition, and living a healthy life, there's a good chance that it will not occur. And they always have the bad things at the top, and as you scroll down, you'll get to the other ones that are less likely. And here we have, more increased risk of Alzheimer's, but less likely dementia, less likely many other different conditions as well. So it's not all bad news. So here is the actual report that you get. And this is just one of over 1,000. And this one's on methylation, so it's pretty detailed. A lot of people think about methylation as just MTHFR gene. But this is the methylation pathway, and these are all the different genes involved, including MTHFR. And there's a number of vitamins and minerals and nutrients that are important in this whole process. So depending on where the genetic mutation may be, it will depend on how you would treat this person or what tests you would do to see if this is actually a problem. That's the map, and then there's 58 pages. So it looks at all the different genes in the folate cycle, the methionine cycle, and it keeps on going down in detail for all the different cycle. Then it'll go into much more detail about each individual gene, what it does, and how to improve it. And then based on this, at the very bottom of the page, they'll have all the different recommendations of what you should do based on your genetics. And if you add your own blood tests in there, it's going to give you even more information. So here we have the Alzheimer's report. So this report's 27 pages long, and it'll give you a risk. And this is not just based on one or two genes, and it doesn't take into account the APOE4 gene, but they look at over 1 million genes, and it'll give you like a percentage chance of having Alzheimer's. Once again, if you follow all the diet, lifestyle advice here, there's a really good chance you will not get Alzheimer's. Once again, it's all research-based. The number one thing, exercise usually trumps everything. Exercise comes in at 1 and 2, and there's some different supplements, diet, lifestyle things that can also be helpful here. Making sure you don't have, high levels of environmental toxins, high levels of homocysteine, other inflammation, insulin resistance, we're all going to have an impact as well. And these are some of the competitor reports. These are some of my favorites. And this one here is 76 pages long, and it's going to be a summary of all different aspects of health. It's going to have detox, methylation, communication, many different aspects, gut health, heart health. This is one of the reasons I like these summary reports. And here's another one from Genetic Genius. This one here is 32 pages. And similar sort of thing, it's going to have all the key genes in different methylation again, recommendations, going to MTHFR in a lot of detail and different things you can do to improve it. But I do like the polygenic scoring the best for that. This is one of thousands of different reports you can get. One of the good things about SelfDecode is that it is super detailed, but sometimes it's almost too detailed, and it's good to have someone go through it with you and explain the most important things for you. When people first use SelfDecode, they often ask me, why does my number one recommendation say exercise or vitamin D? That seems so generic. And the answer is because the most consistently validated interventions across the entire polygenic scoring is the most researched things, which are things like exercise, vitamin D, eating a good diet. So they're always going to be in the top 3 or 4, things like omega-3s. And it's telling you statistically what's most likely to move the needle, not the latest supplement trend. And you'll still get all the different supplements in order of the best research to the least. So now let's look at some of the DNA reports that come with SelfDecode. There are over 1,000 reports, so we can't go through all of them. You'll get an idea of looking through these few reports of what they look like and the depth that they go into. So if you'd like to explore SelfDecode for yourself, I've included my affiliate link in the description. This gives you a better price and it helps to support the channel. And if you want personalized interpretation of your genetic results, your symptoms, your labs, you can book a consultation with me and I'll walk you through the full plan. Thanks for watching, and let me know in the comments which genetic pathway you would like me to cover in full deep dive video.